Today I'm going to take a closer look at two more earth pigments, so raw sienna and burnt sienna. They are named after the Sienna region in Italy, which is where this pigment was first originally sourced. But nowadays, different manufacturers source the pigment from different regions or use synthetics or maybe different oxides to mimic it. They're earth tones or ochres, which means basically it's a pigment from the earth. So they take rocks from the earth, grind it up, and that's where your pigment comes from. Both versions have excellent permanency. So let's talk about raw sienna first for a moment. It's kind of a dull yellowy brown, leans a little bit warm. When tinted with white, it can be a very warm, creamy color. And it's a raw pigment, which means it's not heated. So raw sienna, that's the raw pigment. It would be a similar shade to this if you saw the rocks that the pigment comes from in nature. And the version I'm using is the golden version, which is PY43 or an iron oxide. Next is burnt sienna, which I have loved using burnt sienna for quite a long time because when you mix it with ultramarine blue, it creates a range of beautiful dark grays. It can almost be black, and it's a pigment that's created by taking the raw sienna pigment, heating it up until it's a reddish color. And I'm using, of course, Golden's version, which uses PBr7, which is a calcined iron oxide. Calcination is the process of heating a pigment to create a new color. Now, I've done a swatch sheet where I mixed both raw sienna and burnt sienna with various common hues around the color wheel. I'll show you the colors I've used. So I used two yellows, so a green or a blue leaning yellow, the Hansa yellow lemon, and warm or red leaning yellow, cad-free yellow medium. Of the reds, cad-free red medium, quin magenta, and blues, ultramarine blue, and phthalo blue green shade. I also chose two of the secondary colors. We've got dioxazine purple, cad orange, sap green hue, and then I mixed with titanium white just so we could see kind of what we're dealing with because sometimes the mixes can be a little bit dark. Okay, let's move this out of the way. So I pre-mixed my mixes and applied them to the swatch sheet already. So let's take a look. So we have raw sienna on the left here and burnt sienna on the right. These up here. So raw sienna, yeah, kind of like a very muddy, dull yellow, leans a little bit warm, but makes a beautiful creamy color when it's mixed fairly pale. It's not surprising there isn't a huge dramatic change with the when you mix it with yellow because it is a yellow. So you're mixing yellow with yellow. You can make slight shifts, take your bright Hansa yellow and kind of dull it down a little bit or a lot if you'd like. Cad-free red medium and quin magenta both have really nice shifts in color when you mix it with the raw sienna. You can get a little bit of an orangey red here, a little bit brighter than the cad-free red medium, and quin magenta you can just kind of dull it down a little bit if you add some of the raw sienna. Ultramarine blue, you get this beautiful indigo color, or you get kind of a yellowy green muddy color if you just mix a little bit of the ultramarine blue with a lot of the raw sienna. Phthalo green, you get a beautiful dark, or you can have a really, really nice kind of it's a bit bluer of an olivey green, but still quite nice. Dioxazine purple. Dioxazine purple is a very strong color, so it's hard to kind of get it to not be purple. So you have to mix a lot of the raw sienna with it, but you can just kind of dull it down just a little bit so it's not so intense and get a nice brown because purple and yellow are on the opposite side of the color wheel. So if you want more of a truer brown mixing with the raw sienna, you want to mix it with a purple. Sap green, again, you can kind of lean the green one way or another. Here it is with a lot of the sap green, just a touch of the raw sienna, nice olivey color, and then here kind of a dirtied up yellow here, like a hint of olive to it, and then the orange because you're starting to get back close to that yellow color again, just a bit of a muddier or muted orange. Now let's look at the burnt sienna. they aren't necessarily, like when we compare the two, they aren't necessarily dramatically different, but they also aren't similar enough that you might not use them interchangeably between the raw sienna and the burnt sienna. So if we look at the yellows, so of course much redder because burnt sienna is much redder to begin with. So again, not a surprise there at all. So you can just really warm up your yellows or create kind of a nice ruddy color with by mixing a lot of the burnt sienna and just a little bit of cadfree yellow. Your reds, just really nice, still pretty vibrant reds, I would say. Especially compared to the raw sienna versions. I'd say the burnt sienna is a lot more vibrant, or at least a little bit darker, which is nice because then you have a little bit more control over what shade you want to use or what value you want to have on your painting. The blues, like I mentioned earlier, I've used burnt sienna mixed with ultramarine blue a lot. Now I only did 2 mixes of every color, so we're not necessarily seeing that here. But if you want a nice brown, a warm leaning brown, because ultramarine blue has a lot of warmth to it, you can mix a lot of the burnt sienna with just a touch of the ultramarine blue, and it really makes a nice brown. Same with the phthalo green, it makes a nice darker brown. And then this color, beautiful, beautiful dark kind of oceany color. And then of course dioxazine purple. Again, dioxazine purple is a really strong pigment, so it's hard to kind of bring the purple down. So I had to add just a tiny bit of purple for each of these, and a lot of the burnt sienna. But both allow you to kind of, mute the dioxazine purple, because dioxazine purple can be pretty intense. And sap green hue, again, lovely greens, a lot darker than the raw sienna greens. That's not surprising because burnt sienna has a lot of red to it. Sap or green is the opposite of the color wheel from red. Red and green are on opposite sides of the color wheel, so you get much darker versions. Whereas the sap green, because the yellow kind of is kind of part of a green color, it gives you more of a range of greens. Whereas it's a lot darker or browner of greens when you mix it with the burnt sienna. And then again, cad orange, you're getting close again to on the color wheel to where the burnt sienna sits, so you're really just kind of muting your orange color and making slight shifts. So between the two of them, I really like how burnt sienna has a lot of intensity differences. I find the raw sienna maybe a little bit chalky, even before you add the white, because I can see a bit of chalkiness once I added the titanium white to my different mixes, whereas on the raw sienna I see a bit of chalkiness even before I add the white, but still a nice color. So I did a couple of paintings. Let me just swap out. So I did these 2 quick little paintings. Not really any interest in making a particularly nice painting here, but just something that I could kind of demo some differences between the raw sienna and kind of compare how they could be used. So with the raw sienna, I really struggled getting any sort of a dark. It was really, really difficult. I did my best and I got a bit of darks, but nothing too amazing here. Worked really nicely for the sandy areas though. And then for the burnt sienna, I definitely got my darks. It was much, much easier to do the darks. But with the sand, I had to actually just use yellow with a touch of the burnt sienna. So I would say this sand is much nicer than the sand with the burnt sienna, just because I think raw sienna works really nicely for sand, especially like a wet sand, or here where it's a scene with red rocks, so there's a bit of that color influence that likely gets into the sand. And just a note with both of these paintings, I did put, for this one, raw sienna is mixed even just like a tiny bit into all of this. So in the sky, there's a touch of raw sienna mixed with ultramarine blue. For the ocean, so there's a touch of raw sienna mixed in with the phthalo green. So throughout, I used raw sienna. And again here, burnt sienna, used it throughout. So these 2 paintings kind of give you an idea of what you could do with raw sienna or burnt sienna. And I think between the 2, I probably won't continue buying raw sienna because I think there are some other options out there that are a little bit better, like a yellow ochre. But burnt sienna, I think I'll keep around because I do really, really like using it to mix darks. And really, both of them, they both create kind of an endless series of browns. I think burnt sienna, again, wins on the variety of browns that you can create, but also the variety of values you can use once you start mixing white in with it, because with the raw sienna, it's a paler color straight out of the tube. So it's really hard to get those really, really dark colors.